I never thought a quiet Sunday afternoon would turn into a lesson in local government, but that's exactly what happened the day the HOA decided they could tell me who was allowed to sit at my own kitchen table. I'm retired now, living in a modest neighborhood where most folks wave, mind their business, and take pride in keeping things friendly. That calm lasted until the afternoon. My sister, her husband, and 2 old Navy buddies pulled into my driveway for a long overdue visit. We were barely settled with coffee when I noticed her standing at the edge of my lawn, clipboard tucked under her arm like a badge of authority. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. She wasn't officially in charge of much, but she acted like the mayor, sheriff, and judge all rolled into one. She stared at the extra cars, lips pursed, already counting imaginary violations. I stepped outside, hoping a polite hello would send her on her way. Instead, she launched right in, informing me that the HOA guidelines limited the number of guests per household, especially on weekends. She spoke slowly, like I was hard of hearing or slow on the uptake. I told her these were family and friends, here for lunch, nothing more. She shook her head and warned me that fines could follow if I didn't comply. My guests watched through the window, forks paused mid-air, unsure whether to laugh or be offended. I tried reason first. I'd lived here years without a single complaint. I paid my dues on time. I kept my yard tidy. She dismissed all of it, insisting rules were rules and she'd be reporting this. Something about her tone rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't about order, it was about control. I told her she was mistaken, and she left in a huff, heels clicking like a countdown. By Monday, a notice appeared taped to my door, citing a violation for exceeding guest limits. That's when irritation turned into resolve. I've lived long enough to know that bullies rely on people backing down. I called the HOA office and got nowhere, just vague references to bylaws and interpretation. So I did what I've always done when things don't make sense. I went to the source. The county clerk's office sits in a plain brick building downtown, the kind you've probably driven past 100 times. I took a number, waited my turn, and explained the situation to a woman with reading glasses and a calm smile. She listened carefully, then pulled out the actual county regulations. Not HOA guidelines, but real law. She flipped pages, tapped a paragraph, and looked up at me. "Sir," she said, "there is no county rule that limits the number of personal guests you may have in your home for a private gathering." She went on to explain that HOAs can't enforce rules that contradict county or state law, especially when it comes to basic property rights. She printed a copy, highlighted the relevant sections, and even stamped it official. I felt like I'd just been handed a shield. She also told me something that stuck with me. Many people never challenge these things because they assume someone else has already checked. In reality, a lot of so-called rules survive purely on intimidation. Hearing that made me realize this wasn't just about me or my guests. It was about a pattern that thrives when decent people stay quiet. Armed with paperwork and a renewed sense of confidence, I returned home. It didn't take long for word to spread. By Wednesday evening, she was back, clipboard in hand, ready to lecture. I met her at the door this time, calm as could be, and handed her the county document. She scoffed at first, then read more closely. Her face changed. The certainty drained away, replaced by confusion and irritation. She argued that the HOA had its own authority. I replied that authority doesn't outrank the law. When she threatened fines again, I told her any further action would be forwarded directly to the county clerk and, if needed, an attorney. That's when something wonderful happened. She had nothing left to say. No lecture, no warning. Just a tight nod and a retreat down the walkway. The next HOA meeting was unusually quiet. The guest limitation rule was suddenly under review. A few neighbors stopped by afterward to thank me. Turns out she'd been pulling the same stunt on others, counting cars, peering through curtains, making retirees feel like rule breakers for having grandchildren over. Standing up once had loosened her grip on the whole street. Over the following weeks, the mood of the neighborhood changed. People lingered outside longer. Kids visited grandparents without whispers of violations. Potluck dinners made a comeback, and laughter replaced that low-level tension nobody realized they were carrying. It reminded me of earlier days, when communities were built on trust instead of threats and people looked out for one another without keeping score. A month later, my Navy buddies came back, this time with their wives. We grilled, told old stories, and laughed loud enough for the whole block to hear. No clipboard appeared. No notice followed, just the sound of people enjoying their lives, the way neighborhoods are supposed to work. I've shared this story with friends my age, and nearly all of them have their own version. Someone tried to measure fence height. Someone complained about a flag. Someone else counted how often a porch light stayed on. These moments feel small, but they add up. Each one chips away at the joy people worked decades to earn. Pushing back respectfully doesn't make you difficult. It makes you a good neighbor who understands the value of fairness and the freedom to welcome people into your life without fear. Especially later in life, those simple freedoms matter more than ever, because time with loved ones is the one thing nobody can replace at all, ever. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: age gives you perspective, and perspective gives you courage. Don't let anyone convince you that common sense disappears when someone waves a rulebook. Sometimes all it takes is one trip to the right office and the willingness to stand your ground. If this story made you smile or reminded you of something you've dealt with, take a moment to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments and let's remind each other that experience still counts.